We are back and we are rating things. It's good, it's bad, it's ugly. Frank wrote about this on Yahoo, by the way. Check out Frank's great writing. Like, I almost take it for granted that we get to hang out every week and just talk ball. But he's also a badass writer. So make sure you're checking out all of the great work he's doing on Yahoo Sports. And you wrote a little bit about free agency, good, bad, and ugly. I thought we could pick one thing from each category, one team from each category that we'll identify as good, bad, or ugly. So Frank, let's go with you first. Give us something good from the when I say good free agency, you say
the Chicago Bears. I really think that they finished last season strong, and we forgot that because they lost Week 18 against the Packers. If they would have beat the Packers like the Lions did the year before that at Lambeau in the season finale, we would have been talking about, wow, the Bears were the hot team at the end of the season. They didn't win that game, but they still finished last season pretty strong, and they came into the season with a bunch of options in draft capital and free agency. You signed DeAndre Swift, maybe overpaid a little bit, but whatever. He at least gives you an upgrade at running back. And the thing I think really sets them apart is they went out and got Keenan Allen. It is so hard to find a top receiver. Darnell Mooney got $13 million a year. Okay? Like, it's hard to find a receiver who's any good. Darnell Mooney, 907 yards the past 2 years combined, got $13 million a year. There's just no receivers out there. In back-to-back years, the Bears somehow managed to land DJ Moore, legitimate number one, and Keenan Allen, who, listen up, has twice as many yards as any Bears receiver in history. Go look it up. It's true. He has over 10,000 yards. The Bears' leading receiver of all time has a little over 5,000. The Bears have never had receivers like this. I give a lot of credit to Ryan Poles, their GM, for pulling this off where you can get a receiver room with DJ Moore, Keenan Allen. That helps Caleb Williams so much in his development, assuming it's Caleb Williams, not Drake May or anything like that, right? You handled the Justin Fields situation. We've discussed that. They could have got more, maybe, whatever, but it's done. You're moving on to Caleb Williams. You get Kevin Byard, who I think is a heck of a safety. I just think the Bears have really improved. I think that this is a team that, look, the Lions are awesome, and they've done well in free agency too. They were in my good category. But the NFC North is no joke, man. I mean, you had the Packers in that too. This is a really, really good division, and the Bears are part of that. I haven't made my picks yet, obviously. It's only March, but I think I'll probably be picking the Bears to make the playoffs this year. This is a really good team that's really doing things the right way in their build process.
What I love about the Bears' strategy is that they've truly been patient in controlling the controllables. And I think this is really important coming into this year's draft because every franchise that wants a quarterback is saying, well, we got to go get one. We got to go get one. What did the Bears do? Last year, they looked at the quarterbacks and said, nope, the guys that we want isn't here. So we're going to trade out. And we're going to use our equity, and we're going to use the draft picks we have. We're going to use the money, and we're going to fix the infrastructure of what this team looks like. And now to that point, yeah, they're picking first overall again because of the Panthers, right? And they're sitting in this situation where they're bringing Caleb Williams in what I think is going to be one of the better weapon groups we've seen for a rookie quarterback. I mean, not only just with the receivers, but also Cole Kmet's a top 10 tight end. Like, the options that are going to, it's a better offensive line than it was. They got really good offensive weapons. They've got a really strong defense. Like, the Bears feel like they've taken a very measured, calculated approach. And as much as we keep yelling about Justin Fields, I would say to everybody, like, that's done. So just take that over on the side. And remember, Justin Fields wasn't the first overall pick. He was picked in the upper third of the first round of the draft, right? Like, so just calm down about that, right? Like, throw that away and say, now what? And if you look at the so what, now what for the Bears, I think you're right. I think the Bears have been absolutely superstars through free agency. Now, I'm going to give you my good team. Are you sitting down? Are you ready for this, Frank? Like, because, I've been firing off some takes today. I'm just going to tell you right now. When I think good teams in free agency, I think the Dallas Cowboys. Hear me out.
Oh my goodness!
I know
what are we doing here? What?
Look,
Fitz,
look.
What are we doing here?
Everybody's yelling about what Dallas didn't do.
They should be.
And I would just.
They should be.
Why? Why?
Go on.
Did I miss something?
I need to hear this. Go ahead.
They were last year. Through the course of the regular season last year, they were one of the best teams in football. Their quarterback played at a level that was so high that with 2 or 3 weeks left, there was a real conversation of if he was going to be the MVP. You look around at the amount of talent they have, the number of guys on that roster that if they went somewhere else would be coveted. And we forget that all the time. They have all the talent in the world. Did it result in playoff success? No. Would there have been something smart in adding maybe a dog to the room that could come in? Sure, I guess. But at the same time, I would look at all of it and say, if you are the Cowboys right now, and you know that you have all the talent in the world, why do you need to go overspend on the mediocrity that was the majority of this year's free agency class just to bring in somebody new, just so talking heads can feel better about it? This was not a 7, 8, 9-win team last year that struggled to make the playoffs. This was one of the most dominant teams in football, and they had a bad day in the first round of the playoffs. And I know because they're the Cowboys, we don't allow that. But I'm not going to let one, if I'm smart, if I'm a good owner, if I'm a good GM, I'm not going to let one bad game in the playoffs outweigh an entire season of excellence. And last time I checked, the Cowboys were excellent if you look at the entire season as a whole.
I can't lie. That's pretty good. That was better than I thought it would be. Let's put it that way. I do agree with a lot of your points. And this has happened each of the last couple off seasons where because it's the Cowboys, everybody overreacts. The sky's falling. Like, oh my God, and then because me and you like to dabble, the win total comes out at like 9.5. And I'm like, did you not see them play last year? This was one of the best NFL teams there is. And you go over and you cash that ticket and you feel pretty good about yourself for that. I could see myself doing that again because you're right. The sky is not falling. This is all about one thing. It's about Jerry Jones getting in front of a microphone at the end of January and saying, we're all in. That's it. Like, if he never said that, which he never should have said that, it was crazy. Jerry says crazy things. I love him for it because he makes my job as a writer easier. But Jerry had no business saying, we're all in. We're not caring about future years. It's all about right now, when that was never realistic for them. It got their hopes up of Cowboys fans when they got to worry about the future. CeeDee Lamb has got to get his extension soon. Micah Parsons got to get an extension soon. They couldn't go out and spend a ton of money on the Derrick Henrys of the world or Saquon Barkley or whoever you want. Now, I will say this. The one thing that bothers me about the Cowboys offseason is not necessarily that they didn't add anybody, because, get it. You don't want to get reckless with these extensions coming up. It's the losses they've had. They have had some key losses. Lost a couple of really good linemen. Lost Dorrance Armstrong off their defensive line. Lost Tony Pollard. Say what you will about Tony Pollard, but who's replacing him? They got nobody at running back right now. So they've had some losses. Those bother me. We'll see what the rest of their offseason brings. We're only a week into this thing. But I get what you're saying in that this is a really good team. Don't screw this up necessarily. Don't overreact. Don't go out and spend $8 billion on Christian Wilkins and then lose Micah Parsons in free agency in a year. This, I at least understand where you're coming from.
My thought, like, okay, so if we really boil it down, if you put truth serum in everybody's veins, this was kind of a meh free agency class, right? For the most part, these were meh names. So if we buy, mostly because I'm a Raiders fan, that Christian Wilkins was the best free agent available on the board, all right? Was that really, like, what's the war that Christian Wilkins adds? The wins above replacement for the Cowboys. Does he make them 1-2 games better? Like, does the playoff game come out different because Christian Wilkins is there? I think part of the hard part of this, like one thing, an exercise everybody's been doing for the last 24 hours around March Madness is don't just tell me that you think it's an outrage that Oklahoma didn't make it in. Tell me who shouldn't have made it, right? And so to me, part of this is like, okay, Cowboys fans, realistically, what did you want your team to do that you think is going to make them better in the regular season and win that playoff game? And if the answer is go get Derrick Henry, I don't know that Derrick Henry stylistically was the right thing that they needed in that offense. I don't know that they can't go out and, like, I don't know that, Estime or one of the kids like that, one of the running backs in the draft class can't come out and fulfill some of that. Where the Cowboys are picking, I do think offensive line becomes a big part of a need for them. I will say this. This is the deepest offensive line draft we've seen in years. So, like, there's depth in the offensive line in the draft, and third and fourth round running backs can offer the opportunity to replace Pollard. Like, I think, frankly, if I just take the star off the helmet and I look at it, what I see is a measured team that's one of the best in the NFL that has a bunch of talent and looked around and said, we're going to run it back. And I don't think that's, I hear you though. Jerry's saying we're going all in. I guess I interpret that as saying we're not going to blow this thing up just because it didn't work. That would have been a smarter way for him to say the same thing.
Right.
All right, so from there, let's go to bad. And just because I'm firing off some hot takes, can I give you a team that I have on my bad list while I keep doing spirit fingers? I don't know why into the camera. All right, you ready for this? Bad. The Pittsburgh Steelers. And you had the Steelers on your good list. So look, if Frank and I were co-Santa Clauses, we would have some real naughty, nice list debates going on right now. Here's the thing. Just because you're lonely doesn't mean you marry somebody, all right? You don't go out and get in a relationship just because you're really sad and lonely. Just because you don't have a quarterback doesn't mean you bring in bad quarterbacks as your option. I think Russ is absolutely cooked. I think Russ will be benched by week 4 in this process, and his career as an effective starter is absolutely over, which means you are now banking that Justin Fields is going to be the answer. And the one thing that we've seen from the Steelers is that you got plenty of guys in that locker room that are not going to keep quiet if it's not going the way they want. We talked earlier about the drama in the locker room for the Bears they're trying to avoid. I think the Steelers going into this thing are in a situation where loud wide receivers will be loud if they don't like the quarterback that's playing. And if that's not working, they'll be louder about that. None of that feels conducive for Justin Fields or for Russell Wilson. I feel this is a team that knows they need a quarterback, knows they didn't have a quarterback. So now they're throwing spaghetti against a wall to see what sticks. And all they're doing is wasting time in relationships with quarterbacks that aren't going to work out for them. So I think that's bad.
When you talk about loud receivers, you could just say George Pickens' name. It's okay. We know already.
You ain't wrong.
I'm not saying you're wrong about a lot of your points, but to me, it's all about the investment. What did they lose? And by the way, I do think Justin Fields is their starter by sometime in October, because you know why? It's the best outcome for the Pittsburgh Steelers. You don't care what Russell Wilson is not your future. Like, a good signing for $1.2 million. Justin Fields, you want to get a good look at him, because you got to worry about, do we extend him? Is he the guy? Can he be the guy? Is he better than what he showed in Chicago passing the ball? All this kind of stuff. Justin Fields is going to start at some point this year. It's the best outcome for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He might start week 1, but for all that's worth. And I just don't think that there's anything wrong with that. If you end up giving up a 4th-round pick because Justin Fields plays 51% of the snaps, which was, the trade stipulation there, I think it's okay. 4th rounder to try to fix a quarterback situation. We've seen a lot of wasted picks in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round of quarterback that are a lot worse dart throws than Justin Fields. I like Justin Fields. I think he's a good player. He does need to get better as a passer, but he's still a really, really young guy. He was never in a great situation with Chicago. I think that maybe he can come along. Like, I like what Pittsburgh did. They didn't have the resources to really, really fix this thing. They had to throw spaghetti against the wall because they didn't have any steak in the fridge. Like, there's nothing there. They couldn't have got Kirk Cousins. They couldn't afford him. They can't get Caleb Williams because they're not going to have the draft capital to move up, and nobody's moving out of there anyway. What can we do? What's our best scenario to try to fix this thing? I think the Russell Wilson-Justin Fields combo is perfectly fine when you consider that they risk nothing on it.
Really strong point on Fields being the best option for them to be starting. That does change a little bit of my mindset on it. I'll be a little kinder to the Steelers. All right, give me when I say bad, you say.
I would have to look at my list real quick because there was a lot of them, but I'll take the Falcons. I'm not as high on the Falcons. I know this is very spicy, but I'm not as high in the Falcons offseason as everybody else because
no lemon pepper wings for you.
I know, right? I keep seeing the risk in Kirk Cousins. $180 million for a guy who's going to be 36 coming off an Achilles injury. I get it. We've come a long way with fixing Achilles, and guys can come back like Cam Akers, and I don't even know if Aaron Rodgers was ever in a position to really come back, but he made it sound like he was. I get it. Kirk Cousins might look good as new on opening day. Even if he was healthy, he's still 36 years old. This thing ain't lasting forever. Falcons did what they had to do to get a quarterback, and I get that, but I just don't know that we're really baking in the risk here that contract is just going to look Russell Wilson-esque in a year. We're just going to be like, wow, that really wasn't a good investment. And on top of that, paying Darnell Mooney $13 million, and I've heard people make the argument that, he gets with Kirk Cousins as a deep threat. It's going to turn things around. He's actually a better player in his stats. I guess at some point, if you're that good, you put up more than 900 yards in 2 years combined. Like, I don't care who's throwing you the ball. I thought that was a massive overpay for Darnell Mooney. They still don't have a pass rusher. I get the draft's coming up. You can fix that situation there. But I don't love the Falcons offseason as much as everybody else. I think they're going to win the NFC South because the NFC South stinks. But I don't know that I'm throwing them a parade yet. I think we got to see how Kirk Cousins plays before I really get on board with the idea that the Falcons are these contenders in the NFC.
No, I respect that. And I think I'm going to try and be consistent on one thing. And I don't care what your team name is here. If you are relying on an old quarterback coming off an Achilles injury, I think that's a bad strategy at the quarterback position. I understand we just expect modern medicine to make everybody immediately come back and be themselves again. I don't know, man. Like, it's an Achilles, and we all know how much legs matter to everything that quarterbacks do in their motion. And it feels like the sort of thing that everybody takes it for granted. And a year from now, we'll be like, oh, it makes sense. I understand why these guys aren't playing as well. They're coming off an Achilles. All right,
By the
so
way, one
let's
real
go
quick
from,
thing about Kirk Cousins.
Oh, yeah.
All the people out there, all I heard about Kirk Cousins the last 4, 5, 6 years, Kirk Cousins stinks. Look at his Monday night record. Look at his playoff record. All of a sudden, he's the savior of a franchise? Like, how did the narrative flip on Kirk Cousins this dramatically? He went for the guy everybody was kicking when he was down. And I don't even think that was fair. I think Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback. To all of a sudden, like, the Falcons are great because they got Kirk Cousins. I think there's a lot of people, if we went through the history of your X/Twitter feed, you'd be a lot of people banging on Kirk Cousins for how bad he was on Monday nights and in the playoffs, who are all of a sudden over the moon over the Atlanta Falcons signing him. Like, I don't know how you reconcile all that.
That is a perfect segue to ugly, because I'm going to start with the Vikings here. Ugly because they lost Kirk. Okay, and I think they lost Kirk with no real set answer what they're going to do at quarterback. But I think the ugliest thing that we're seeing this year is there's a whole group of teams that realize they need a quarterback. I don't think they're going to be in earshot of it. And so I'll for 1 second, I will play the Charles Robinson and Jory Epstein role because I've spent the last 3 days talking to everybody I possibly can. Some people with teams, some people that cover the draft, some people that know the draft, scouts, everybody that I know in my phone book, trying to figure out the quarterbacks. I'm becoming increasingly convinced at this point that quarterbacks, we all know, are going to go 1, 2, and 3. I think quarterbacks are going to go 1, 2, 3, and 4. Arizona's going to move down from 4. Here's the thing. Arizona has made it clear they want a wide receiver, right? That means Arizona is not going to move any further down than 7 or 8. And I talked to a couple of people yesterday that told me they wouldn't be surprised to see 5 quarterbacks go in the top 10. That's not a misspeak. 5. Bo Nix is getting so much love at this point that you're going to hear this. A team is going to have to trade up to acquire the 5th best quarterback in this year's draft. So for all of the, we're tired of Kirk Cousins that the Minnesota Vikings are feeling right now. The one thing I'd say is, okay, who's better? Because what did we just see? We saw Justin Fields, Kenny Pickett, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, all gone from their team. And Trevor Lawrence may not be any good. Now, that could be the worst quarterback class of all time. It might go down as the worst quarterback class of all time. And I know everybody likes to point to the Herbert, Mahomes, that era and say, well, look at how good that one was. That's one. That's one great draft. The chances, the odds that 5 quarterbacks out of this draft are going to be successful are basically 0, right? And everybody keeps saying, well, trade up. Again, 1, 2, and 3, I don't think are available for trade no matter what you offer. You could offer everything. Nothing's there. So the question is it worth mortgaging the future of your franchise for the Vikings to move on from Kirk Cousins, mortgaging the future just to try and get Bo Nix, just to try and get J.J. McCarthy? Like, this is where it gets really ugly to me. Those guys may turn out to be great. They truly might, and I hope they do. But the fact is, the Vikings, the Broncos, the Raiders, the Steelers, I can go on and on. They're all teams that I think have no quarterback, and I think by the time this is all said and done, they have no opportunity for a quarterback, no matter what they do, that actually makes sense. So all of a sudden, you're leveraging for mediocrity.
Yeah, so, I really do agree with you, and the whole point of you're going to move up for the 4th best quarterback in the class. Sometimes that can work out. I'm not saying it can't, but I don't know. Again, I don't think any of the top 3 teams are moving their picks. They need a quarterback. Why pass on them? Real quick, if I'm Arizona, I stick at 4 and take Marvin Harrison Jr., and I don't care what you offer me. I think that guy's generational, and you take him, and you just live with it. Whatever. We passed up on an extra first-round pick from Minnesota. So what?
I think the only way they move down, so this Giants thing that people keep talking about, the Giants are interested in a quarterback. It makes sense to move from 4 to 6 if you pick something up. If you've got the 2 wide receivers, basically, if you believe that Malik or Rome or Marvin Harrison are all basically
I think
the
Harrison
same.
He's as good as I've ever seen coming out of college. He's that good.
And if he's that good, then it's irresponsible. Like, if you're sold on only one guy in your Arizona, it's irresponsible to move down. There's enough smoke here where I feel like 4 or 5 could end up being in play. What did you give us an ugly? Give us an ugly.
I kind of think the Los Angeles Chargers. I mean, we come in and it's like Jim Harbaugh and this talented roster, and then it's like, well, the roster is not so talented anymore because the salary cap is actually not a myth. It's a real thing that forces you to cut Mike Williams, trade Keenan Allen, and let Austin Eckler go in free agency. That's taking the 3 biggest weapons Justin Herbert has away from him. Quentin Johnson showed nothing last year as a first-round pick. I mean, look, I'm not giving up on a guy after 1 year, but he's got a long way to go before he takes over as a number one receiver. I think you've really set Justin Herbert back here. You've lost a couple other guys. This whole Jim Harbaugh is going to fix everything. Well, you need talent too in the NFL, and I think it's been a really rough offseason for them. Even if you Williams is hurt all the time, and Eckler's a running back who's going to be slowing down, and Keenan Allen's old. I don't care. It's hard to replace those guys, or even guys like Kenneth Murray on the defense who they lost. I just it's been a really, really bad offseason for the Chargers. I get there's a long-term plan here and all that, but you lose ground on the Kansas City Chiefs. You're already behind them. It's not going to get any better getting rid of your three best offensive weapons. Even Gerald Everett, they lost him. I just have not liked this offseason for the Los Angeles Chargers because they were in such salary cap hell. What do they got to show for it? Blowing a 27-point lead to the Jaguars in a wild card round? If you're going to spend like crazy and have all these unbelievable cap hits, at least have a couple of playoff wins to show for it. They have nada. And I think the Jim Harbaugh era is getting off on the wrong foot here.